Okay, we're going to go over those questions from Chapter 7, Part A. So the first question was, what do you think that Serafina is hearing in the woods? It doesn't tell us exactly. This is another opinion question because it's your thoughts. I think, though, that since it's telling us that when they looked at the base of the tree, that it looked like it was chopped down with an axe as opposed to like it being a dead tree that just kind of fell over, or like when super strong winds knock over a tree, it looks a little different. So since they think it was with an axe, I'm going to be thinking that the sound that she's hearing is probably going to be some person instead of a thing. Only because typically an animal or something can't hold like an axe, or I don't know, any animal that can hold an axe and use it appropriately. And then our second question was, what is the name of the assistant coachman? Well, if you flip in your book, if you're following along to page 94, it says that a boy with, she describes the way he looks. He's a skinny boy with a mop of curly hair. He's very skinny. His clothes don't really fit. Then we go down and Braden says that's Nolan. So his name is Nolan. So now we're going to go on and we're going to listen to the rest of Chapter 7, Part B. Go ahead and we are going to finish Chapter 7. We are going to backtrack just a little bit so we can remember where we were last time. It says, but she was calm. She was in the right place. She figured if her mother could move through the forest at night, then so could she. Suddenly, she heard the sounds of footfall in the brush in front of her, as clear as a rat's footsteps in the basement, but much louder, much larger, moving through the leaves and the dirt. She wasn't sure whether it was an animal or a human. As she crept closer to the sound, she crouched down, but kept moving slowly forward. Sound and sight, of feeling and smell, her whole body felt alive with sensation. With all of her senses working, all of her muscles in place, she stalked so slowly, so quietly, that she didn't make a single sound. She heard the footsteps ahead of her more closely now. Feet crunching through the autumn leaves, walking at first and then breaking into a run. A man running through the underbrush. Some 50 yards out into the woods, she ran towards the sound, knowing that when a rat was moving, it couldn't hear nearly as well as when it wasn't. When the man suddenly stopped, she stopped as well and remained perfectly still, holding her breath. She knew that the man must be listening for her, but she made no sound. As soon as he started moving again, she moved as well, shadowing him. But then something happened. The footsteps stopped and felt a swooshing sensation of air on her face and head, like the beat of a vulture's wings. And then suddenly she heard a second set of footsteps behind her, between her and the carriage. How was that possible? Were there multiple attackers? The forest erupted in a cacophony of sound. Leaves crashing, sticks breaking, the rush of rapid movement. Her muscles exploded in life, and it was an attack coming from all directions. In the distance, Gideon started barking and snarling and gnashing his teeth as if he were facing down Satan himself. The carriage, she thought. They're attacking the carriage. She turned and sprinted towards it, heedless of the sound she made. She glimpsed a flash of movement surge past her in the darkness, but she could not tell what it was. As she ran towards the carriage, she could see Braden and Nolan. But where was Crankshawd? He was the strongest person in their group, the man who was supposed to be protecting them. Look out, Braden, she shouted in warning. They're coming, look out. Hearing her call, Braden turned just in time to dodge the flashing shape in the incoming attacker. But then, in a startling movement and a whirling of black shadow, the attacker turned and was upon him again. Gideon charged in, snarling and biting. Nolan punched and kicked, fighting, shouting, striking. All was confusion in a swirl of motion and battle. Just as Serafina came within striking distances, a large black shape floated past her. She flinched so hard that her back hit a tree. Giant centipedes poured out of the log. Worms oozed out of the earth. The man in the black cloak had come. He was here in these woods. There weren't multiple attackers. There was only one. He seemed to float on the violence of the battle, his decaying, blood-dripping hands reaching outward as he came upon Braden. It was clear that he wanted the boy in particular. Serafina leapt forward to defend her friend. Gideon charged as well. But it was little Nolan, in desperate act of shouting courage, who threw himself in front of the young master and blocked the attack. The man in the black cloak opened his arms and pulled Nolan into his chest. The slithering folds of the cloak wrapped around the boy. Nolan's shouts turned into screams. The gray smoke filled the forest. The rattling shook the trees. And then Nolan disappeared. It took her breath away to see it again. "No!" she cried in anguish, anger, and frustration. Then the shaking came, and the glowing and the terrible stench that followed. Every leaf on every tree around them suddenly fell to the ground, drenched with blood, and the ground itself became a stinking, horrific mud. Expanded in size and now seemingly more powerful than ever, the man in the black cloak advanced, heading straight for Braden once more. Braden needed to fight or flee, but stood frozen in shock by what he had just seen happen to Nolan. He stared at the man in the black cloak, unable to move. Without thinking, Serafina charged forward and pounced on the man's back. She caterwauled a wild and crazed screech of anger. Her hands and feet clawed the man's snarling ferocity. The man in the black cloak had no choice but to turn and fight her. He tried to pull her off his back and wrap her in his voluminous black cloak like he had the others, but Braden pulled back a mighty swing and slammed the man's head with a large branch. Gideon lunged forward and bit the attacker repeatedly. Serafina tore herself free, rolled to the ground, spun, and leapt back into battle. All three of them pressed the attack. The man in the black cloak, his eyes still glowing with power, levitated upward. 3 against 1 now. He had lost the element of surprise. He snapped the billowing folds of the black cloak with his arms, and a great explosion of air knocked Serafina off her feet. She went tumbling backwards as the man in the black cloak withdrew into the forest and then was gone. Gasping to catch her breath, Serafina scrambled to her feet and readied herself for the next attack. But it never came. The battle was over. She looked at her hands. Her fingers were slippery with blood, and her fingernails had torn at the man's black cloak, rotting skin. But it was more than just the remnants of the battle. It was like the skin in the glove. He was deteriorating. Through the darkness, she saw Braden lying on the ground. Frightened that he had been wounded, she ran over to him. "Are you hurt?" she sputtered. "I'm all right," as he grasped as she helped him to his feet. "What about you? Did he hurt you?" "I'm all right," she said. I don't understand, Serafina. What was that thing? What happened to Nolan?" "I don't know," she said, shaking her head in frustration. "I mean, where did he go? Is he dead?" She didn't know the answer to Braden's question. Thinking about poor little Nolan made her sick to her stomach, angry, frightened. He was just gone. How could she help him? It was the second time she had battled the man in the black cloak, and the second time she had lost a friend. "Come on, we gotta go before it comes back," she said, touching his shoulder. "What happened to Crankshaw?" Braden asked as he and Gideon followed her back towards the carriage and the horses. "I never saw him," she answered. "Do you think it got him too?" She could hear the fear and confusion in his voice. "No, there's a rattling noise when it does it, and there was only one rattle." "You know what it is?" he said, grabbing her arm and bringing her to a stop. "Tell me, Serafina." "I saw it last night," she said. "It took Clara Brams the same way." "What? What do you mean? Where? What does this mean? Clara's dead? I don't understand what's going on." "Neither do I," she said. "But we've got to go." Braden picked up a stick from the ground and looked out into the forest. "Whatever it is, it's still out there." She knew he was right, and they fought it off, but it was definitely still out there. She couldn't forget the image of Nolan leaping forward to save his master. She could still see the terror-stricken look on the boy's face right before he disappeared. As she looked at Braden, she couldn't help the terrible sinking feeling that crept into her mind. "Whatever it is," she said, "it didn't come for Nolan. It came for you." And that is the end of chapter 7. Thank you for listening.